South Korea's Constitutional Court has ruled in favour of a full impeachment of President Yoon Suk Yeol, ending months of turmoil after his brief declaration of martial law last year. Mr. Yoon has apologised, saying he's sorry he failed to meet expectations. The court's 8 judges held a unanimous vote, saying they believe the ex-leader violated his duty as president by inciting chaos across the country, and that he deployed troops to parliament for, quote, political purposes. Mr. Yoon's senior aides, including the chief of staff, have reportedly offered to resign. Friday's decision now sets in motion a race to elect the next president within 60 days. Acting President Han Duck-soo and the Election Commission are eyeing June the 3rd as a possible date for polls, stressing no final decision on that date as yet. Until then, Mr. Han will stay on as interim leader. Registration for potential candidates opened today. And more, Grace Shin joins me in the studio. Grace, in all these 111 days, we've been covering both pro and anti-impeachment for the former president now. So it's very hard to read public opinion. What the court ruled on today, do you feel that is what the people wanted?
Well, Wee-Soo, it's difficult to say that all South Koreans wanted President Yoon to be impeached. But what we can say for sure is that South Koreans have been waiting for months for a conclusion to be made. And today's verdict came 122 days after Yoon Suk Yeol declared the martial law, and that was in December of last year. Also, as you mentioned, 111 days after the parliamentary impeachment motion was filed. Now, many wondered whether all 8 of the Constitutional Court's justices would come to an agreement. They thought it was taking them longer compared to previous impeachment cases that only took up to 60 to 90 days. And for this one to take over 100 days, many wondered, would there be split opinions among the justices as much as the public? But in fact, given that they unanimously voted in favor of President Yoon's impeachment, experts have been explaining that the justices poured in an extra amount of time so that they could perfect the final stages to review and make sure that all key issues have no room for any rebuttal. Despite that, as you've mentioned, there have been split reactions to the justices' final call that cannot be appealed or reversed. And why don't we take the time now to hear from CNA senior correspondent Im Suk, who has been on the ground the whole day listening to both sides, whether they be pro-Yoon, for Yoon not to be impeached, or those who wanted him to be impeached. Take a listen.
Supporters of impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol watched and listened in disbelief as the Constitutional Court ruled against their wishes. Many of them were in tears as they said they could not believe what they had just heard.
나는 도저히 불복합니다. 이거는 나라가 아니에요. 나는 나라가 망했다고 생각해요. 이게 나라냐고요. 진짜 피를 토하고 싶은 심정이에요.
Meanwhile, people who have been calling for him to be removed from office jumped for joy as they heard the news. They hugged one another, saying this was a victory for democracy and for the people who have been out in the streets nearly daily since Mr. Yoon declared martial law in December last year. Many remained in downtown Seoul hours after the verdict was announced to continue their celebrations.
사실 한 며칠 전부터 계속 체한 것 같이 안 내려가고 잠도 못 잤거든요. 근데 기분이 그냥 뻥 뚫린 것 같고 막 눈물이 나올 것 같고 주변에서는 진짜 사람들이 울고 그러더라고요.
지켜봤는데 좋아야 되는 게 마땅한데 근데 왜 이게 당연한 건데 이게 왜 이제 결과가 나왔는지가 너무 좀 원망스러워요.
The Constitutional Court's ruling comes into effect immediately. South Korea will have to hold a snap election within 60 days after the court removed impeached President Yoon from office. President served a single 5-year term here in South Korea. Current polls show opposition leader Lee Jae-myung, who lost to Mr. Yoon in the 2022 presidential election, maintaining a lead for the snap election with no major challengers. But he too faces several trials on charges ranging from bribery to those related to a property development scandal. Whoever becomes the next president, these South Koreans say they want someone who will work for the country and its people.
이제는 대통령 본인의 권익만을 위한 그런 사람이 아닌 진정으로 국민을 위한 대통령이 나왔으면 좋겠으면 하는 바람입니다.
서민 경제를 일단 가장 불이 났으니까 불을 끄는 것. 그래서 서민들의 경제 문제를 시급하게 해결하는 게 가장 중요하고.
Until there is a new leader in South Korea, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo will remain as acting president. Lim Yeon-suk, CNA, Seoul.
One possible date, and it's certainly not confirmed, might be June the 3rd for those snap elections. As Yoon Suk mentioned there, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung maintaining the lead for the snap election with no major challenges. But are there any challenges to Mr. Lee Jae-myung?
Well, actually, recent polls show that his support rates have gone up to double digits after the court recently found him not guilty of violating the election law. But as Yoon Suk mentioned, he still has a few court battles that he faces, whether it be regarding bribery or the $1 billion property development scandal that may affect whether he was even allowed to be running in the election. But we'll have to see. The ruling PPP, on the other hand, hasn't been as vocal as to who their possible frontrunner may be. But observers are pointing to Han Dong-un, and if you remember, that name came quite a few times back in December. He was the ex-leader of South Korea's ruling People Power Party who demanded Yoon to resign as soon as he imposed the martial law decree. But instead, it was Han who had to resign as the leader of the party amid heightened tensions and frictions within the party. And another point worth noting is then, when will the snap elections take place? And as you mentioned, it seems that it may be June 3rd, 60 days from today. That would mean political parties would have until May 11th to register. And another key angle that the presidential candidates this time may have to cover is whether the Constitution needs to be amended. This agenda has been shed light upon ever since President Yoon did impose this martial law. His legitimacy, or the grounds that he was talking upon, was that as a president has the executive power to determine whether a country is in a national state of crisis. However, this incident shed light to that being too subjective and that the Constitution is too loosely written and it gives too much power for an individual to be exploiting. So that's an agenda that many have their eyes on. And regarding the privileges and heavy responsibility a president actually bears, they're also given many immunities. So I'd like to end upon the fate that is remaining for Yoon. Now that Yoon has been stripped of president and is awaiting results from his criminal trial, which will officially begin from March 14th, if charged with insurrection, he may face life imprisonment or even the death penalty.
So it's not the end of legal troubles there for the ex-president now, Yoon Suk Yeol. Thanks so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.